everybody, welcome back. And I'm Jennifer, aka Jen Jen, and we are going to do a true crime corner video today. I apologize if this is late getting out. It's been a busy day here today, so I have not had a chance to sit down and do anything. So we're going to get started. Today we're going to talk about the case is Jeffrey R. MacDonald. He was a military physician, and he was convicted of murder, and he was convicted of murdering his pregnant wife and two daughters in 1970 in February. Yeah, right. I know. Believe me. Let's see. He has always proclaimed his innocence of the murders, which he claims were committed by four intruders, which were three. There were three male and one female, who had broken into his home and attacked him and his wife and his children with instruments such as knives, clubs, and ice picks. He's This remain, of course. Now this is one of the most biggest litigated murder cases in all of American history. So we're just gonna start, and to understand who he is and so forth, we're gonna get into his early life first. Jeffrey MacDonald. Now, he was born in Jamaica, Queens, New York. He was the second of three children born to Robert and Dorothy Perry MacDonald. He was raised in a household on Long Island with a disciplinarian father who, although nonviolent towards his wife and his children, demanded obedience and achievement from his family. He attended Pachacutic High School, where he became president of the student council. He was voted both most popular and most likely to succeed by his fellow students, and was king of the senior prom. Towards the end of his 8th grade year, he became acquainted with Colette Catherine Stevenson. He would later recollect that he had first observed Colette walking down the hallway with her best friend, and that although he was attracted to both girls, he found Colette more attractive. 2 weeks later, they began talking and formed a friendship with MacDonald, and soon he was asking her out to the movies. They formed a brief romantic relationship in the 9th grade, and he later recollected they fell in love while holding hands on a balcony while watching the movie A Summer Place. He would later reminisce that whenever he or Colette heard the song theme from A Summer Place, either they would turn up the radio. The following summer, while visiting a friend on Fire Island, Colette announced to MacDonald that their relationship was over, and he later formed a relationship with a girl named Penny Wells. Now, his high school grades were sufficient for him to earn a 3-year scholarship at Princeton University, where he enrolled as a pre-med student in 1962. By the second year of his studies, MacDonald and Wells had separated. He soon resumed his romantic relationship with Colette, then a freshman at Skidmore College. She had grown shy into a shy young woman with a slight fear of the world, who would rely on his self-confidence. MacDonald found her timidly touching and gradually viewed himself as her protector in addition to her boyfriend. They regularly exchanged letters, and he would frequently hitchhike to Skidmore College to be in her company on weekends. Although MacDonald was known to be promiscuous, he resolved to marry Colette upon learning she was pregnant with his child in August of 1973. She in turn abandoned her studies to raise their child. With the consent of Colette's family, the two married on September the 14th, 100 people attended the service with a reception that was held at the Fifth Avenue Hotel. The couple then honeymooned at Cape Cod. Their first daughter, Kimberly, was born on April the 18th of 1964. After he completed his scholarship at Princeton, MacDonald briefly worked as a construction supervisor before he and his family moved to Chicago in the summer of 1965, where he was accepted to Northwestern Medical School. The couple moved into a small one-bedroom apartment with Colette, maintaining the household and raising their daughter, as MacDonald focused on his studies, also working a series of part-time jobs to assist with family finances. The following year, the family relocated to a middle-class neighborhood. Their second child, Kristen, was born on May 8th, 1967. Shortly after that, MacDonald graduated from medical school in 1968. He and his family relocated to Bergenfield, New Jersey, where he completed a one-year internship at the Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center in New York, specializing in thoracic surgery. MacDonald later described his internship year as a horrendous year for both himself and Colette, and adding he frequently worked 36 hours with only 12 hours at home. As such, when at home, he was frequently exhausted and had limited interaction with his wife and daughters. Where am I? Yeah. At the completion of his internship, MacDonald and Colette vacationed in Aruba before he joined the Army. He then joined the Army in 1969 in July. He was briefly deployed to Fort Sam Houston to undergo a physician's basic training course, and he opted to join the Green Berets while stationed at this base. After 6 weeks, he was posted to Fort Benning. Although he had joined the Army, knowing he may be deployed to serve in the Vietnam War, he later learned that as a Green Beret physician, he was unlikely to serve overseas. And I did not know that. That's something I had no clue. In September, MacDonald was assigned to the 3rd Special Forces Group as a group surgeon at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, where he was joined by his wife and children. He and his family resided where they resided in a section of the base reserved for married officers and afforded security by military police. They quickly became popular among their neighbors, although they were occasionally known to have argued. By the time the family moved into the house on the base, Colette had accrued 2 years of studies with aspirations to obtain a bachelor's degree in English literature and teach part-time. Both daughters had developed distinctive personalities, Kimberly being marked feminine, intelligent, and shy, Kristen a boisterous tomboy who would run over and crack someone if she observed her older sister being bullied by other children. Shortly after Christmas in 1969, with his wife approximately 3 months pregnant with their third child and first son, MacDonald bought daughters a Shetland pony, anticipating the family would soon relocate to a farm in Connecticut. He had kept this purchase a secret from his wife and children, and he and his stepfather-in-law drove them to the stable as a surprise on Christmas Day. His daughters chose to name this pony Trooper. The same month, Colette is known to have penned a letter to college acquaintances in which she had described life as never being so normal or happy, adding She and her husband were content that their baby son was due to be born in July and her family would be complete. By 1970, MacDonald had earned the rank of captain. He was planning to study advanced medical training at Yale University upon completion of his tour of duty as a Green Beret doctor. February 16th through the 17th of 1970. On the afternoon of February the 16th, MacDonald took his daughters to feed and ride the pony he had bought them for Christmas. They returned home at 5:45 p.m. He then changed into a pair of old blue pajamas, and after the family ate supper, Colette left the household to attend an evening teaching class at Fort Bragg's North Carolina University Extension. Now, according to him, he then played horsey, allowing his daughters to ride upon his back as if he were their pony for a short while before he put Kristen to bed at approximately 7 p.m. as Kimberly played a game on the coffee table. He then slept for an hour before watching Kimberly's favorite television show, Laugh-In, with her before his oldest daughter also went to bed. Colette returned home at 9:40 p.m. The two sat and had watched television together before Colette decided to go to bed midway through The Tonight Show. He had fallen asleep in the living room in the early hours of the following day. Now, we're going to get into the murder. At 3:42 a.m. on February 17th, 1970, dispatchers at Fort Bragg received an emergency call from MacDonald, who faintly spoke into the receiver. Help, and I quote, help, 544 Castle Drive, stabbing, 544 Castle Drive, stabbing, hurry. The operator then heard the sound of the receiver clatter against a wall or a floor. 10 minutes later, military police arrived at the address, initially believing that they were responding to a domestic disturbance. They found the front door closed, locked, and the house dark inside. Now, no one answered the door. They circled to the back of the house, where a sergeant discovered the back screen door closed and unlocked and the back door wide open. The sergeant enters, walks into the master bedroom before running to the front of the house, shouting, "Tell them to get Womack ASAP." Okay. Now, Colette was discovered sprawled on the floor of the master bedroom. She lay on her back with one eye open. She had been repeatedly clubbed about her body, with both her forearms later found to be broken. The pathologist would note these wounds had likely been inflicted as Colette had raised her arms to protect her face. In addition, she had been stabbed 21 times in the chest with an ice pick and 16 times about the neck and chest with a knife. Her trachea was severed in 2 places. A bloody and torn pajama top was draped upon her chest, and a paring knife lay beside her body. Beside her, Jeffrey MacDonald was found laying face down, alive, but wounded, with his head on Colette's chest and one arm around her neck. As military personnel approached, he whispered, "Check my kids. I heard my kids crying." Now, this is what I don't understand. Okay, he's laying there with her arm, laying there next to her in her arm, and his arm is around her neck. I'm trying to figure out, is it around her neck in a possible bad way? I don't know. It doesn't. This is what I'm trying to figure out. 5-year-old Kimberly was found in her bed, having been repeatedly bludgeoned in the head and the body and stabbed with a knife in the neck about 8 or 10 times. She lay on her left side. Her skull had been fractured from at least 2 blows to the right side of her head, and one wound to her face had caused her cheekbone to protrude out of her cheek. The wounds to Kimberly's head were severe in nature that had caused her bruising to her brain. Excuse me. Don't know why I said to brain. Across the hallway, the 2-year-old Kristen was found in her own bed, also laying on her left side with a baby bottle close to her mouth. Now, again, before I go any further, I forgot to say this video might be this case might be a little explicit for everybody, and if it gets too bad, I apologize. I did not realize this when I was reading it, but it made me sick when I was reading this over. She had been stabbed 33 times in her chest, neck, and hands, and back with a knife, and 15 times with an ice pick. The injuries to her hands were likely defensive wounds. On the headboard of the MacDonald's bed, the word pig was written in 8-inch capital letters. The blood used to write this word was later determined to belong to Colette. Having received impromptu resuscitation, MacDonald sat upright and then exclaimed, "Jesus Christ, look," and I'm quoting this, "Jesus Christ, look at my wife. I'm going to kill those goddamn acid heads." He was immediately taken to nearby Womack Hospital shouting, "Let me see my kids," as he was carried out of his home on a stretcher. Now, the next part is his account of what happened. He was taken to Womack Army Medical Center. Medical staff discovered the wounds MacDonald had suffered were much less numerous and severe as those that were afflicted upon his wife and his children. He suffered cuts and bruises and fingernail scratches to his face and chest, although none of these wounds were life-threatening or required stitches. MacDonald also found to have had a mild concussion. He also received a single stab wound between 2 ribs on his right torso. This wound was discovered by a staff surgeon as clean, small, and sharp, that measured 5/8 of an inch in depth and had caused his lung to partially collapse. MacDonald was released from the hospital after 9 days. He was then questioned by Criminal Investigation Division. MacDonald claimed that at about 2 a.m. on Friday, February 17th, he had washed the evening dinner dishes before deciding to go to bed, although because his younger daughter, Kristen, had wet his side of the bed, he had taken her to her own bed, not wishing to wake his wife to change the sheets. He had then taken a blanket from Kristen's room and fallen asleep on the living room couch. According to MacDonald, he was later awakened by Colette and Kimberly's screams, and Colette shouting, "Jeff, Jeff, help. Why are they doing this to me?" He says that he rose from the couch to go to their aid. He was attacked by 3 male intruders, 1 black and 2 white. The shorter of the 2 wore a lightweight, possibly surgical gloves. A 4th intruder that he described as a white female with long blonde hair was wearing high-heeled knee-high boots and white floppy hat, partially covering her face. The individual stood nearby, holding a lighted candle, chanting, "Acid is groovy, kill the pigs." Yeah, okay. MacDonald claimed the 3 males then attacked him with a club, an ice pick, with the female intruder shouting, "Hit him again." During the struggle, his pajama top was pulled over his head to his wrists, and he had used this bound garment to ward off thrusts from the ice pick, although eventually he was overcome by his assailants and knocked unconscious in the living room end of the hallway leading to the bedrooms. When he had regained unconsciousness, the intruders had left the house. He then stumbled from room to room, attempting mouth to mouth upon each of his daughters and which, it didn't work. Before discovering his wife, he had pulled a small paring knife from Colette's chest. He then tossed onto the floor, attempted in vain to find her pulse, then dropped a pajama jacket over her body, and then he phoned for help. Okay, does that sound too weird to you? I don't know. I'm still, yeah. Now, with the investigation begins. The military police were instructed to check the occupants of all the vehicles in and around Fort Bragg, seeking 2 white men, one black man, and a white woman with blonde hair and a floppy hat in an effort to apprehend the intruders. MacDonald alleged that had attacked him and his family. Despite all efforts, they failed to locate the 4 intruders, and the initiative was abandoned by 6 a.m. Shortly after daylight on February 17th, investigators recovered the murder weapons just outside the back door. These instruments were an old hickory kitchen knife, an ice pick, and a 31-inch long piece of lumber with 2 blue threads attached with blood. All 3 were quickly determined to have come from in the house and had been wiped clean of fingerprints. MacDonald claimed he'd never seen these before. The investigators studied the physical evidence. The Army CID quickly came to disbelieve MacDonald's version of events, as they found very little evidence that would support his version. Although MacDonald was trained in unarmed combat, the living room where he supposedly fought for his life against 3 armed assailants showed few signs of struggle apart from a coffee table which had been knocked onto its side, with a pile of magazines beneath the edge and a flower plant which had fallen to the floor. They questioned his neighbors, revealed they had heard no sounds or a struggle or disturbance within the household in the early hours, but had heard Colette shouting in an angry, loud voice. The 16-year-old daughter of these neighbors, who occasionally babysat for them, informed investigators the 2 had seemed taciturn and indifferent to each other in the months prior to the murder. So now, by February 23rd, Provost Marshal Robert Kirowanag informed the FBI to discontinue the search for the 4 intruders. In addition to the lack of damage to the inside of the house, no fibers from MacDonald's torn pajama top were found in the living room where he claimed the garment had been torn in his struggle with the intruders. However, fibers from the pajama top were found beneath Colette's body and in the bedrooms of both of his daughters, and 1 fiber from his garment was also found under Kristen's fingernail. A single fragment of skin was recovered from one of Colette's fingernail, although this evidence was lost later on. Blood-stained splinters likely sourcing from the section of lumber recovered close to the back door of the apartment were recovered from all 3 bedrooms of the apartment, but not the room where MacDonald claimed to have been attacked. No blood or fingerprints were found on either telephone MacDonald claimed he had used to call for help after checking each member of his family and attempting to resuscitate them. Furthermore, the blood-stained tip of a surgical glove glove was also found beneath the headboard where the blood inscription was written. This glove was identical in composition to a medical supply MacDonald kept in the family kitchen. Okay. This all starting to make sense. Although it rained on the night of the 16th and the 17th of February, MacDonald specifically claimed the intruder's boots were all wet with rainwater just dripping off them. The sole footprint observed was a bloody bare footprint located in Kristen's bedroom, leading from the child's bed in the direction of the doorway. By mid-March, they had obtained the results of the forensic testing of the blood, hair, and fiber samples, which contradicted MacDonald's accounts of his movements and further convinced them investigators of his guilt. For example, Kimberly's blood was also found on his pajama top, even though he claimed he was not wearing his garment while in her room attempting to resuscitate her. His blood was located in significant quantities in only 2 locations. In front of the kitchen cabinet where the rubber gloves were, and upon the right side of a hallway bathroom sink. The investigators also questioned why Colette's blood was found in Kristen's room, although 3 victims were found in separate rooms, suggesting that they had been attacked separately. However, moreover, although blood evidence indicated Kimberly had been attacked as she entered the master bedroom, they questioned why home intruders would bother to carry her back to her bedroom to continue their attack. See, that doesn't make sense to me. If they're, you break into somebody's house and you do this, you're not going to want to take them back to their bedroom. All four of the family members had different blood types. A statistical anomaly, had assisted investigators in determining the movements of each of the family members and their theory as to a likely scenario. Upon assumption, the 4 individuals discovered by responding military police were the only 4 in the house in the early hours of February, investigators were able to reconstruct a scenario of the chain events which unfolded. An argument or a fight between MacDonald and Colette began in the master bedroom, possibly over the issue of Kristen's repeatedly bedwetting his side of the bed while sleeping there, or his adultery. Investigators speculated that the argument turned physical and she had probably hit him on the forehead with a hairbrush, which had resulted in his concussion, as he retaliated by hitting her, first with his fist, then beating her with a piece of lumber. Kimberly, whose blood and brain serum were found in the doorway, may have walked in after hearing the commotion and was struck at least once on the head, possibly by accident. And believing that Colette was dead, he carried a mortally wounded Kimberly back to her bed, and he stabbed her, and then proceeded to Kristen's room, carrying the club that he had used to bludgeon Kimberly, intent on disposing of the last remaining witnesses. Before he could do so, Colette, whose blood was found on Kristen's bed covers and on one wall of her room, apparently regained consciousness, stumbled into her daughter's bedroom, and threw her own body over Kristen in a desperate effort to protect her. After killing both, he then wrapped Colette's body in a sheet, carried her body to the master bedroom, leaving a smudged footprint matching her blood type as he exited Kristen's bedroom. This guy, okay. They theorized that MacDonald had attempted to cover up the murders by using articles of the Charlie Manson murders that he had recently read in a March 1970 issue. He put on surgical gloves from a medical supply in the kitchen closet. He went to the master bedroom where he used Colette's blood to write the word pig on the headboard. He then laid his torn pajama top over her dead body and repeatedly stabbed her in the chest with an ice pick. Then discarded the weapons close to the back door of the property after wiping them clean of fingerprints. He then took a scalpel blade from the bathroom supply closet, entered the adjacent bathroom, stabbed himself once while standing aside the kitchen, but standing aside the sink before disposing of the surgical gloves. He then used the family telephone to summon an ambulance before lying beside Colette's body as he waited for the military police to arrive. Okay, I know, that's a lot. So bear with me. Now, we're going to get into his interrogation. In April of 1970, the investigators formally cautioned, then interrogated MacDonald. He was first offered the chance to recount his version of the events and recounted his claims of being attacked by 4 intruders with whom he grappled before falling to the ground, and observing the top of some boots and being rendered unconscious before gaining consciousness, experiencing symptoms of pneumothorax in the hallway where the intruders had left. They were unconvinced by his accounts. Midway through the questioning, MacDonald was asked about his stab wounds. "You didn't do it yourself, did you?" This question prompted MacDonald to deny the accusation before referencing his puncture wound and his having to persuade hospital doctors to insert a chest tube into his body, as he was sure his lung was punctured. The questioning then focused on the crime scene and the results of the forensic testing. MacDonald denied any of the murder weapons had originated from his house, despite the fact that a section of lumber matched wood from Kimberly's closet. He also claimed that he was unaware of how the fiber and the blood contradicted his accounts of his movements and actions, and at one point claiming the intruders could account for the fact a pocket torn from his pajama top and splattered with Colette's blood had been found in a section of the bedroom far from his wife's body, despite the fact he claimed to have had this garment wound around his arms in his living room struggle with the intruders, only to have draped the garment over her body. Now, this is a quote from one of the investigators. "This weapon was used on Colette and Kim. It's a brutal weapon. We had 3 people that were overkilled, almost, and yet they leave you alive. While you were laying there in the hallway, why not give you a good blow or 2 from behind the head with that club and finish you off? You saw them eye to eye. They don't know that you wouldn't be able to identify them at a later date. Why leave you there alive?" The investigator questioning him as to the minor nature of the wounds that were inflicted on himself, and he was comparing them to his wife and to the wife and the daughter. The investigators questioned MacDonald as to the lack of disorder and damage within the household and the lack of any kind of motive, stating that the investigators' experience had 4 intruders embarked on a murderous frenzy in a small household. They would have expected to encounter some broken furniture, bashed in walls. MacDonald was unable to offer a plausible explanation for this observation, and he also claimed to be unaware of how Kimberly's blood and brain serum were recovered from the master bedroom. He they repeatedly stating all the facts that they pointed to him having to stage the crime scene, and he was unable to offer plausible explanation to this questioning before abruptly accusing the investigators of having run out of ideas and attempting to frame him, maintaining 100% solved to maintain 100% solved homicide rate. When they asked him to submit a polygraph test to verify his accounts, he readily agreed, although within 10 minutes of the conclusion of the interview, he called investigators to state that he had changed his mind and would not submit to the test. He was put on trial on an Article 32 hearing and was overseen by Colonel Warren Rock, and his lawyer adopted an offensive strategy on behalf of his client at this hearing, citing numerous examples of incompetence on behalf of the Army CID, which he stated had clumsily and unprofessionally trampled all over the crime scene during the examination of the house. The first witness to testify in his defense was responding military policeman Kenneth Micka, testified that on the way to answering MacDonald's emergency call on the night of the murders, he observed a blonde woman with wide brim hat standing on a street corner approximately a half a mile from the MacDonald home. He noted that this sighting was unusual given the late hour and the weather. Colonel Rock also testified that he himself went to the scene of the crime and tipped the coffee table over, with it striking the side of a rocking chair and coming to rest on its edge. Now, suspect identification. Now, this is what I don't understand. He's being charged with these murders. Okay? In August, Siegel was approached by a delivery man who claimed the blonde woman MacDonald stated had attacked his family, may be a local 17-year-old drug addict and a police informant named Helena Ware Stokely. According to Posey, Stokely had been a company of 2 or 3 young males in a car parked outside her apartment at 4 a.m. on the morning of the murders. Posey also claimed that Stokely had ceased wearing her boot and floppy hat and had dressed in black on the date of the funerals,